Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Mirror of Music. My name is Dannii Cohen. This week's guest is Fiona Sinnott. Fiona Sinnott performed the role of Cosette in the original Manchester and Dublin production of Les Misérables. Fiona also appeared alongside a stellar cast at the O2 in London to celebrate the film's 25th anniversary production. In West End, she starred as the Baroness in Jeremy Sam's production of The Sound of Music at the London Palladium. Opposite Simon Corkindale, she starred in Andrew Lloyd Webber's production of Sunset Boulevard at the Adelphi Theatre in London's West End, opposite Petula Clark and Graham Bickley. She played Giulietta in another Lloyd Webber show, Aspects of Love, starring opposite John Barrowman. She also played in 2 productions of Guys and Dolls, starring as Sarah Brown, and performed the role of Carrie Pipperidge in Rodgers and Hammerstein's classic Carousel. That and much more. I hope you will enjoy the show.
Nice to meet you, Dannii.
Nice to meet you.
We've been Instagram buddies.
Yes, for quite some time.
Yeah.
Congratulations with 40 years of Les Misérables.
Yes, that's a big milestone, isn't it? And we just had our own little celebration a little while ago. It was 35 years since I did 2 productions, but the first one that I did, and we managed to come together on Zoom and have a little virtual party and say hi to each other. It was great. Yeah.
It's so much fun that that's possible these days to do.
Yeah. The era of self-taping and Zooming from home has its advantages. It doesn't beat being in a room with real people. You know, you can't beat a hug, but it's great. I mean, I'm in North Hertfordshire and you're in, I think, are you in the Netherlands?
Yes, I am.
I mean, look at that. We wouldn't have been able to do that before. So yeah, it has its uses.
When did you first hear about Les Misérables?
I suppose I was aware of the show like anyone was. You know, we know initially the reviews were really bad and then it was just a massive audience hit. And I got involved quite early on. I was doing a production of Carousel in Dublin, and 2 of the creative team had seen me because I'm Irish, and I was invited to come and audition in London for Les Mis, and I was living at that point sharing an apartment with my friend Jacinta White, who was in the show in London. So I had already had that sort of connection. I was hanging out with her and her friends, and so I got invited to audition, and really didn't think I could sing it. I wasn't sure. I always thought of myself as an actor who could sing rather than a singer who could act. But I had always sung as well, and I kind of blew the final audition. I think I blew the top note in the final audition. I thought, oh, this isn't going to work. But yeah, I think it was 1992, so we were I think we were the first tour, the first UK tour, and I did it in Manchester and I did it in Dublin. So for me, Les Mis is probably the most formative show I've ever done in terms of the friendships that I made. I met my then husband on the show. He was the drummer. So yeah, it's been probably the most influential show of anything I've done in terms of my life, and yeah, amazing.
What were some of your cast members?
You've actually spoken to some of them, and I will say I think that our particular cast might just be the best cast Les Mis has ever had, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet in that, but I think we have some of the most extraordinary performers. Ria Jones, who I know you've spoken to, was our Fontaine, and many people will be aware anyone who's into musical theatre will know that she was the youngest Evita ever.
Yes.
She was the first person to ever sing Sunset Boulevard score at Sydenham, at Andrew's home. She was already legendary by the time she joined us. We had recently, there was the new Jesus Christ Superstar concert, and everybody is, raving about this new production, and most people at the same time are jumping back on YouTube to look up Steve Balsamo, because his rendition of Gethsemane in particular, and his performance as Jesus Christ Superstar titled character, was just so phenomenal. And he was part of our cast. We had Mike Sterling, who you've spoken to, was my first Marius, and my second Marius was Mario Frangoulis, who is a huge international opera star now. He was an opera star in making at the time, but he's just become a huge global star now. It's amazing to see what he's done. And we had Philip Quast, who many people consider to be the finest Javert there's ever been. And Jeff Layton, who I believe, if I remember correctly, had never acted before when he came in as Javert, as Valjean. And I just remember this guy who he was a singer, he was sort of doing clubs and stuff, but he had never been on a stage as an actor before. And he went along to an open call and went through the whole process and was cast, and was one of the most natural, truthful actors I'd ever worked with. And that remained to be the case throughout the entire run. I'm going to sound like a real stick in the mud, but I don't like to mess about too much. When I'm on stage, I like to keep it real and truthful. And, there's no sort of turning your back to the audience and having a wink with people. I like to believe that the scene that I'm in is truthful and real. And, 15, 17 months or something with Jeff, he looked me straight in the eye and played those scenes like he was my father, I was his child. And every single night I cried for real at his deathbed scene, because it felt so touching and so truthful. And he is still one of the most committed performers you'll ever come across. He works so hard. We just had an incredible ensemble. Julia Worsley, one of the best voices I've ever heard. She's done loads of movies. She was in the Evita film, she's in the Phantom film. I think she was in the Les Mis film as well. She was in the Les Mis film. Meredith Braun, who was our amazing Eponine. We have a whole spate of Christines, people who went on to play Christine. A couple of cover Cosette, so Sarah Ryan, who was in our production, covered Cosette, went on to play the role, went on to play Christine. Also, who else? Rebecca Thornhill. So just, I could go on, but really I think the friendships that I made on that show, and also just watching those people in rehearsal and throughout the run, was just so inspiring. You had to up your game. You really did. I'm so lucky to have had that experience. And I mustn't forget the creative team. I'm sure now people don't get 8 weeks of rehearsal, but we did back then. Ken Caswell was our amazing director, and David White, Stephen Hill, the musical department. They held our hand to the point where David White even came to a couple of singing lessons with me. I mean, talk about commitment. And we were 3 weeks improvising before we even put the show on its feet, because they wanted us to really get under the skin of these characters and create characters that would be truthful and real, but also we wouldn't get bored. So as the show went on, we continued to play and explore these people that felt very real. But yeah, a good 3 weeks before we even got to the material, other than learning the music, which is such a treat, such a privilege, you know. You don't get that now.
Did you get to read the book as well?
Oh yeah, I love the research, so I definitely read the book. And the book, the Les Misérables, as it's told in the musical, is a very small part of the book. I mean, the book is, it's a doorstop. It's a huge tome. But I always read the source material, and I love the research. I've just played a couple of real people, just on a short film, and a new musical based on the life of Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond books. And in both cases, I played real people, and I got such a kick out of that, because there's real material to, you know, you're not just having to invent something. You invent a certain amount, but you can see real photographs of them. You can read about their life. You can read what other people have said about them. And that's fascinating for me. And also you have a sense of responsibility to kind of tell their story truthfully, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the things I love doing as well. Researching and discovering the history behind certain things. It's always such a
Yeah.
yeah.
When you are passionate about something and you clearly are a great supporter and lover of musical theatre, it's, you know, you can get really sort of into all the nitty gritty and become, that's your area of expertise, you know. It's yeah, it's fascinating. But I think the research part, that phase, is part of some of my favorite part of being an actor. There's a safe space in that, and also then you get into rehearsals where it starts to get a bit, it feels a bit more dangerous, because you're playing and you have to sometimes be bad before you can be good, try things and fail and get up and try again. But you're in a sort of sacred space. You're in a safe room with other people also falling flat on their face and trying new things. And there's, you almost feel like you wish that part of it would go on forever. And then there comes a point where you have to put a magnifying glass over what you've done and show it to people. And that can be scary. But also, I think one of your contributors, Shona, described it like the audience is like a single cell. Like they are you know, they are a one kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but they become one, and they influence one another. So you can get an audience one night that finds the comedy and everything, and an audience the next night that just feels the pathos, and you make friends with them eventually. It's less scary.
How did you see Cosette for yourself?
How did I see the character?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to make her as real for myself as possible and for the audience. And I think it's often a challenge with the ingenue. And quite often they are written as a bit drippy, a bit like they run around in a pretty wig, falling in love with the first person who smiles at them. And that can be a challenge for an actor if you are interested in building a character of a person who is three-dimensional. And often what you're given is not three-dimensional. So you go back to the source material. That was really helpful, because actually her journey is really quite traumatic. If you think about it, you know, what happens with her father, and her being kept sort of caged and not allowed to explore and live a full life. And the frustration of that, and then she meets this man and falls in love, and he's wounded, and you know, those are big life events that any of us would struggle with. And so I tried to find places within that where she was a more fully rounded person. It is a challenge. I mean, there is a scene, literally, she's walking with her dad, she sees a man, he smiles at her, and they fall in love, and then that's, you know, I mean, if I'm not sure I ever believed in love at first sight, but that's quite hard to make real. And I know it's a musical and people suspend their disbelief, but the person has to feel real for you, otherwise, well, at least for me, otherwise I just get bored. And when I'm playing a character and I leave them behind, it's almost like I miss them. You know, they seemed like a person I hung out with. I lived their life for a bit, and now they're gone, and you kind of almost miss them a little bit. That's weird.
I can understand it. It's even I used to do theater in the past, and I still miss the things I did then. But it's even when you have a favorite TV show, sometimes you start to miss the characters, and when you are the character, it must be even more part of you.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And yeah, and like I said, particularly when you've played a real person. I've just done a short film called Same Difference, which was really beautifully written, and it's about a woman who came to Coventry during the war and was there during the Blitz. And as part of my research, I learned a lot more. I realized how little I knew about that how much Coventry had been damaged during the war. And this was a woman that had lived through that, literally with her severed arms in the streets and just being bombarded by the Nazis, and then moved to London, and as an Irish woman in the 60s experienced what they famously, there were signs up that said no dogs, no Irish, no blacks, and this kind of racism. And the photographer Declan, who wrote the script or co-wrote the script, based it on the real life experience of his granddad's sister. And at the same time, he had an actor friend who wanted to write a story about his granddad's experience of coming to live in London during the 60s. He'd come from Jamaica, where he also received kind of no dogs, no blacks, no Irish, this kind of similar things that go on now, you know, strangers, keep out, our borders are closed, all of this. And so they decided to write the script together and put these two characters who never met into the story together. So it's this almost two-hander between these two people. And Declan gave me photographs of the real Nora and told me a few stories about her. And she lived in my head for a few weeks while I tried to figure out who she was and how to tell that story. And when we had finished, I literally, she is like a person that I miss. You know, I lived her life briefly, but thought about her so deeply and felt the pain that she felt of that wartime experience very deeply, really felt it like it had happened to me. And so I think a lot of these characters, whether it's on stage or on camera, stay with you. They change you. And I always say to young actors, I've been asked a few times to go into drama schools and talk to them sometimes about my experience. And, you know, sometimes people would ask your advice because I'm so old and I've been around so long. And I always say the same thing, that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's very tempting to just go deeply into everything and go full pelt, but you also have to not wear yourself out. And one of the ways that you do that is to be mindful about the fact that your body doesn't know you're pretending. It doesn't know the difference. So if you're playing scenes 8 shows a week where there's trauma and torture and loss and death, and even if it's a musical theatre thing where it's light, it might be light and fluffy, you are pretending that those things have happened to you. And I think that your body takes in that somehow. So it's an interesting career. We should get danger money for all the lives that we've lived. So yeah, I'm mindful of that. I'm mindful of it. And also now that I have lived more experiences, not all of it's good, I have more to draw on, I think, as you get older. You become a better actor, you know. I feel that way anyway.
I think that for theater, it must be even harder than filming, because for filming you do it once, twice perhaps, but in theater you do this night after night, and it's a hard show with trauma and anger and all these things, and it must be hard to find it in yourself every night.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are some people who are able to go there deeply and do it night after night and are built for that. And you know, and I tried to go there. I try and be as truthful as I possibly can. You know, there are people like Tracy, who did End of the Rainbow, you know, playing Judy Garland, for example. That's one of the most extraordinary performances I've ever seen. I can't think of another instance where I saw an actor go as deeply and play something as raw and visceral and extraordinary as she did, and that's why she was so hugely awarded and feted for it. And she has said she just is able to go there and is able to repeat it and able to do that night after night after night. So I'm probably not built like that. I'm not sure I could survive a long run in a role like that. That's not to say we go as deeply as we can and we commit to it. But as you say, the long runs, they're challenging. You have to be like an athlete, treat your body and your mind with kid gloves, and on camera, then you can be rough with it, because not rough, but you don't have to repeat it, as you say, so many times. But I like both disciplines for different reasons. I think that the research is the same.
Yes.
The process of figuring out who that person is the same. The energy is a little bit different. And in some ways, I feel like I was always more suited to working on camera. There's an element with theatre where you're, like I said before, you're in that safe space in a rehearsal room, and everything is quite small and truthful and up close. And then you get to a point where you have to move into a theatre and you put a magnifying glass over it. You have to make everything bigger, put everything through your body to reach the people in the back of the gods. And the challenge for me has always been doing that and not losing the truth of it. But you're throwing it out there, whereas with camera, the energy is slightly reversed. I feel like with camera, you're sort of going, come here, I'll tell you something. So you're drawing the person into you, and in the other way, you're pushing it out towards them. That's how I think of it. But ultimately, the people that you play are the same. It's nice to mix it up.
Do you have any stage memories of working on the Mies?
Oh gosh, loads. I'm not quite sure why my brain goes to all the things that went wrong. And everyone's got, stories. I mean, the famous one for our production, I suppose, was that we didn't have an act 2 on our opening night. So yeah, God, we had the old US touring set, and we had a bit of a dodgy barricade, and we had plan Bs for most things. So if the Revolve broke down, which it did occasionally, we figured out a plan B where we literally, and we did the show a few times without the Revolve, where you would just literally carry on furniture and carry it off again. We had a plan B if the Rue Plumet gates didn't come on, so Marius wouldn't climb over something. We just play the scene in kind of time and space. But they made a decision that if ever the barricade broke down, they couldn't do the show. And so they were having problems with it during the first act. And then we were all told, we broke for the interval. And then the interval was 15 minutes and 20 minutes and half an hour and 40 minutes. And we were wondering what the hell is going on. And then we got a message over the tannoy. We were to come to the stage. And I said to someone, but I'm in my bloomers and my dressing gown. Because Cosette has a 40-minute break in the middle of the show. So I was literally in, her underwear and a dressing gown. They're like, it doesn't matter, come down to the stage. So we all lined up across the front of the stage, including Cameron. And they made an announcement to the first night Fancy Pants audience that we couldn't carry on. Sorry, the barricade's broken. There was no act 2. I remember Les Dawson, who you're probably way too young to remember, but Les Dawson was a British comedian, very famous in the 80s, and he just shouted out from the back of the auditorium, "Tell us how it ends." So Cameron was like, "Yeah, so we'd like to invite, come to the party," or whatever. So yeah, we didn't have an act 2. We had a couple of bomb scares as well. I remember being out on the street in costume with the audience. That was actually, I'd completely forgotten about that until David Fawcett, was one of our cast, who took some amazing photographs, himself and Andy. They run a show now, have been for like 25 years, called Beyond the Barricades. They've been touring the show and songs from the show for the last quarter of a century, which is amazing. But he had taken photographs of this particular day, and it just all came sort of flooding back. And the only other one I remember was getting stuck in the lift in the middle of the show. So the Palace Theatre in Manchester was really, it was huge, and we were on the 5th floor, so it was a huge building. And it was, it was a bit much to take the stairs all the time, because you were up and down. So we were allowed to use the lift. And as I said, I had 40 minutes off in the middle of the show, and I went up at the end of Act 1 by myself, because everybody else was either getting ready for Act 2 or was on stage. And I got stuck in the lift. And I'm like, well, I've got to go back on in half an hour. So they worked to try and get me out for, I think it took about 40 minutes. So I just about made it back on stage in the wrong costume, which I suppose wasn't the worst thing that could have happened, but that was pretty traumatic, because I could feel the time counting down. I thought, what are we going to do if they can't get me out, Oh dear. There's things that go wrong on so many shows that at the time, I can still come out in a cold sweat thinking about the first preview of it. I did a production of They're Playing Our Song, and quite often when you're coming out of technical rehearsals into the first preview, you're invariably behind. You probably haven't done a full run of the show. Some things have only been very basically blocked, and then at the very last minute, 10 minutes before you're due to run upstairs and put your makeup on, someone says, oh, the bows, we're just going to stand like that, you come in from there, you come in from just so-and-so lead, and they put it together really quickly. And so we were in that situation. It's the first preview, and we finish the show, and we come to do the bows, and I'm standing completely in the wrong place, way too far forward. And when the big red heavy curtain comes down, it hits me on the head, and I'm kind of, seeing stars, and I sort of come to, and then I realize that I'm by myself in front of the curtain. Oh. Everybody else is behind going, where's Fiona gone? And I'm at the front, and the entire audience is looking at just me by myself, and I'm thinking, oh my God. And I just remember hearing my mum's voice in my head going, well, if you're going to be wrong, be loud, confident, and wrong. So I just took a massive bow and scuttled back when the curtain came up again. Among everybody else, of course, they teased me like crazy for weeks afterwards, but that was mortifying, absolutely mortifying. Oh gosh, yeah, there's so many, yeah.
Is there anything you still wish to discuss that hasn't been mentioned, or that you just think of?
No, I don't think so. I think I just want to pay tribute really to the teams that I've worked with, the crews that I've worked with, the actors that I've worked with, people who are continuing to make work in really, really difficult circumstances. This was never an easy industry. When I was at drama school, they were like, oh, it's 92% unemployment. But we do it anyway because it's vocational. And people make amazing work, make great sacrifices, are poorly paid in many instances, and serve a really important purpose for society. And I just am incredibly proud and privileged to have worked with so many incredible people. And because I think so recently we lost lovely Frank Thompson, who was exactly the same age as me, so I think that's why it really hit home as much as his loss. It reminds you of your own mortality. I think about the people who've passed that I've worked with, going back to Les Mis, our Madame Thénardier, Louise, was Louise Plowright, was one of the most extraordinary, talented and lovely people. Elaine Whitcomb, who we also lost from that company. With Frank, we also from Sunset, Jill, who was the alternate Norman, who was an absolute legend. I mean, I don't even know where to begin thinking about the people that have gone before me, who I've been lucky enough to work with. And I guess I'm getting to that age now where I think it's important to remember them and to honor them and honor what I learned from them and honor the privilege of having got to know them a little bit and spend time with them. And I'm looking forward to telling more stories. I've been really busy this year. It's been great to see that there is lots of work out there for me. Just shot 7 short films, an online series. I'm doing some presenting work this week. Looking forward to shooting a feature film in January. So there's life in the old girl yet. And I couldn't be happier. And I really appreciate you asking me to come and chat, particularly with my having been gone from the business for so long. I was very flattered, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, Dannii.
Thank you so much. And it was so wonderful talking to you at last and meeting you.
You too. Pleasure. Thank you. Speak soon.
We will.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. What do you think makes the story of Les Misérables so enduring for audiences?
It's a good question. I think that there are timeless themes, love and loss. I think there's a fascination with that time in history. I think that if anyone's read the book, it's, as I said, it's a huge story, but it's a real epic tale, well told, and the characters are so well rounded and so well written that it's been made multiple times, movies and TV series, and the shows, plays as well as the musical. It's just a great story with well written characters, and the music of this show, I mean, essentially it's an opera. I mean, it's sung through. It's phenomenal. I remember when the film came out, I wasn't sure if I wanted to watch it. I thought I'd be bored because there was nothing new that it could possibly tell me, because I had imagined every scenario. I had played the show so many times. I thought, do I really want to sit through it? And also my dad at the time was really poorly, or else had just passed away, but he'd had a long illness, and it was quite traumatic for us as a family. And I realized then, as I was watching the film, how much it was mirroring my own life, the idea of the loss of a parent. And I was able to watch it completely with fresh eyes, and I was so deeply moved. And it got to the trio at the end where he's saying goodbye and he's about to pass away. And I thought, I was crying so heavily. I was like, I'm going to start ugly crying in a minute. I'm going to be literally going, am I going to have to leave the room? Because I was just so moved by it. And I thought the film was great. I really enjoyed it. And it was great to see friends, people I knew in it, lots of spotting of, there's Mandy and there's Julia. Yeah, I mean, it's just a great story. They'll keep doing it. Someone will keep doing it, making more versions of it as time goes on.
What were some of your other favorite shows to work on?
There's a couple that spring to mind immediately. I played the Baroness in The Sound of Music at the London Palladium, and that was an absolute treat. It was a really beautiful production. Jeremy Sams directed it, and Anna Lindstrom, resident director, who looked after us all to keep the show fresh. And my lovely Frank Thompson, who was the kids director, who passed away a few months ago. I had also worked with him on Sunset Boulevard. So just delightful people making a fantastic piece, fresh for a new generation, Rob Jones' beautiful sets. But that theatre is special. It really, really, it carries so much history, and you know, it was quite intimidating. I remember during rehearsals, we'd be in the auditorium, you know, we were teching, looking at the stage, and the scale of the space is so enormous. It was the biggest theatre I'd ever worked in, and I was so intimidated. I was like, how am I going to fill this space? But you got used to it. It came home. And also, I really loved the fact that the character of the Baroness, who's kind of, for anyone who remembers the film, she's kind of the arch nemesis of Maria, vying for the captain. She's really different in the show. That's not to diss the movie in any way, because it's amazing, and it's having its anniversary now, 60 years, I think it is. And Julie is about to turn 90.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of celebrations going on around that. But the Baroness in the film is a little bit more two-dimensional in the way that she's written, and the story between why she and the captain break up is presented as a rivalry around Maria. And actually in the show it's very different. They really break up over politics. They break up because she's essentially close to being a Nazi. She wants to keep the status quo and get along with everybody and protect her money and protect her status and her position in society, and believes you should just be nice to everyone and get along with those funny men in power. And the attraction to Maria, she notices it, but it isn't really the reason that they break up. And also she has 2 songs that aren't in the film. So there was always that lovely thing of a kind of rustle of programs. You'd start to sing and you could feel the audience go, what's this? I haven't heard this one before. Is this new? Because the show has some new stuff, has some different stuff in it. And I worked with some amazing people. You know, my lovely friend Connie, who was Maria, and Summer Strallen, who came in afterwards. My dear friend Paul Grunert, who was Max, who's like her buddy in crime. And the other one that springs to mind, sorry, I'm not being very concise, but this is my brain, long-winded. Sunset Boulevard. I did that in the late 90s. We came in after John Barrowman and Catherine Porter, and I took over as Betty Schaefer, with Graham Bickley, who I think you've also spoken to. Lovely. Yes. So an absolutely gorgeous cast, again working with Frank, my lovely friend Frank. And we had Petula Clark as Norma Desmond. And when Petula was, I think, on holiday or filming or something, we had Rita Moreno came in for 6 weeks. I mean, my brain nearly exploded that I was working with this absolute legend. So that was an amazing experience. And I think that the people that I worked with on that show, and the quality of the piece and the writing, and Andrew was lovely. He's Lord Lloyd Webber was the producer, obviously, of the show, and his company, and it was just lavish and wonderful to do. And Betty is a really great character. She's an interesting, feisty character. I had such a great time. I almost left because I was asked if I would consider, they were talking about buying me out of my contract to come over and play Christine in Phantom, and I was only halfway through the show, halfway through my contract, and I was having a ball, and I just didn't want to leave. And now I slightly regret it, because I would have had the opportunity to work with Hal Prince. It was quite early on in the run, but I just think it was maybe also too close after playing Christine and playing Cosette. And I thought, do I want to play another ingenue who's running around and falling in love? And I don't know. And Betty was just something I could get my teeth into. So I stayed put. So I'll never know what it would have been like to have played that role. But I always sort of had my eye on Madame Giry anyway. I thought she was the more interesting character. I think as a woman, as an actor, I found her very interesting. So maybe that will cross my path at some point. I hope so.
It would be a great role.
Yeah, it's a great part. She's so interesting, so multi-layered, so mysterious. And quite, I mean, I've read the book a few times and she, you know, she's quite different. In the book, she's a bit of an amalgam of a couple of characters.
Yes.
But I think that she's just a fascinating character. I think for me, not just because I'm interested in playing it, but I think that I think she's the most interesting character on the stage. I've never quite got to the bottom of what she's about. There's a lot of mystery in her. And I think that's really, really interesting. And she's strong, she has status. And for a woman at that time, in that period, that's also says a lot about her character. Yeah.
What's strange about the Phantom book is that the original translation, which is the most one is the most available, is actually not a complete translation.
I remember hearing that there's missing some bits missing. Yeah.
Yes, a few 100 pages at least.
Extraordinary. I wonder what those 100 pages would have contained. I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
It has been translated in later years, and mostly it was censored because the original translator couldn't believe that Christine could have feelings for the Phantom, because he just didn't allow that.
Oh dear.
So every part where the Phantom was sympathetic, or where she talked about liking him or certain things about him, all erased.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, it's another, like Les Mis, it's another show that endures, because the writing is everything. You know, the score obviously is extraordinary, but it is based on a great, cracking, great book, a great story, and it again has had multiple versions of it done over the years for good reason, because they just, people enjoy that story, and they're really well written characters, and you know the show is amazing. It's, you know, it's like the Tower of London now, and it's just such a part of the London landscape. People go to Phantom, and long may it continue. I actually had an audition for Madame Giry. I had a recall for Madame Giry about 1.5 years ago, and the day of my recall I ended up in hospital with COVID. Because I was away from the business for a long time. You know, I circumstances, really, it wasn't entirely my choice, really. I was caring for my dad, who was ill. I had a car crash it took me a few years to recover from, and I made the decision because there were too many obstacles. I'd been through the ringer and I was in pain, and I thought I need to figure out what else I can do. And I trained and retrained and became a marketer, because I think actors make good marketers. You know, we understand about story and how to adapt messages for different audiences. So I still work with some clients, but I woke up one morning about 1.5 years ago only, and it just suddenly went, why am I not an actor anymore? I just realized I wasn't in pain anymore. My dad had passed away, those responsibilities had gone, and I had put it away because I thought I had to. And it was a bit of a Ross Rachel situation. Are we broken up, or are we on a break? I thought we were broken up, but apparently we were on a break. So I just thought, you know what? The world has moved on, the world has changed. Nobody remembers who the hell I am, but I have 25 years worth of work and experience. I'm an older woman now with stuff to say. I have life experience to draw on, which makes me a better actor. And I didn't want to wake up at 75 and go, oh, I wonder what would have happened if I had gone back and become an actor again. So the last 1.5 years has been the greatest joy, honestly. Just telling stories again. I feel like me again. I'm using all of those skills, because that's all I ever wanted to do, is be an actor. And I feel like I'm being true to myself again. So it's really lovely.
I think I'm kind of at a point too now, because well, the more I talk about acting and theater to people, the more I feel that's where I want to be again too. At least with writing again, as it would be a start for me. But
yeah, I think if it's in you, it never goes away. There's the creative gene. I think for everybody, the creativity is so important. And if you think about during lockdown, what did people do? They turned to the storytellers. they turned to film and music and theatre, and they watched content online. And you know, we are a vital part of a functioning society. The storytellers reflecting life back at people, and you know, but a good story can literally shift the needle of a whole country. You know, if you look at something like Adolescence, this TV series, which people are saying maybe one of the best series ever made, the whole country watched it, and it just shifts something. And these are really tough times. It's very difficult. You know, we scroll through social media and we're seeing, you know, awful, traumatic things happening around the world. And I think that there is still, it's still appropriate for us to make light, fun, and not so fun entertainment, but things that reflect the human experience back for people and remind them of their humanity, and remind them that there are, for all the division between us, there are things that bring us together. And stories of those things. We sat around the campfire, we sat in caves, and we drew on the walls. You know, they're very, very important to the human condition. And I think whether you're writing or making content as you do, and you're enabling storytellers to come and talk about their experience, and encouraging and celebrating the art form, which is great, and we thank you for that. And it serves an important function, I think, for people. You know, there's room for all of it.
Yeah, I kind of think that's why, as we're talking about Les Mis and Phantom just now, that's why these two stories are so enduring, because in one story it's about the resilience of people, and in the Phantom it's about the outsiders screaming to be heard. And I think there will always be people that relate to either or both.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are they are archetypes for a reason. There are people see themselves and see their experiences mirrored back to them, even in something that's hundreds of years old, and especially in something that's hundreds of years old, because it's true. They say funny because it's true, you know. Yeah, it's a very good point.
One thing I found out over the years, when I was young, when I listened or saw Les Misérables, I was always more relating to Valjean. And as you get older, you finally start to understand the things Javert is talking about.
He's misunderstood.
Yes.
Yeah, but yes, no, I totally understand that. I think we can connect with different characters at different phases of our life. And Javert is, you know, is a fascinating character. And like the best, I hate to call him a villain, but he's not exactly the villain of the piece, but he's the arch nemesis,
yes,
of the leading character. And he's a man in conflict, and he's fascinating. You know, he's a man he's not motivated by greed or by a desire to harm and hurt. He's motivated in his utter relentless pursuit of this man who all he did was try to feed his family. He's motivated by something honorable to his mind and his education and experience. So it's great. No, it's a really good point.
I think it's Javert's suicide song, when his whole world breaks down, because he was always believed in one thing, and then suddenly his whole view is shattered. When you're older, you suddenly realize, because sometimes it has happened to you. It's something you always believed, it suddenly turns out to be something different altogether.
Yeah, it shattered his life, and what had he left? Because his work was everything in that time, I suppose. That was his whole, you know, raison d'etre, and that what he built his life and career on was shattered in a moment. And it just shows you as well the power of an act of kindness. Always say, you know, that empathy can't, or hate can't sustain having empathy thrown at it. You know, so somebody in these days on social media, when people are being vile to one another, they're using their inside voices. You know, Trump has made it, he's not the only one, but certain more right-wing politicians have made it permissible and acceptable to say the things that people might say in their heads out loud and to strangers online, and it's vicious and cruel. And the way I deal with that, a lot of the time I just ignore it. I don't get a lot of it, but you get the odd thing. And I meet it with kindness. I meet it with curiosity. I meet it with empathy, kindness, patience. And they don't know what to do with that. And like, this person wants to listen to me, is curious about how I came to that viewpoint. And half the time they either go away or they end up, sometimes they end up apologizing, because they're not expecting to be met with understanding and patience. And I think that hate and fear, which is mostly what these things are, can't withstand that. It just withers away. It's a very strange time we're living in, and I'm glad to be a storyteller. I'm glad to be someone in this period of time that's trying to entertain and tell stories, because we always will need that, and there'll always be a place for that. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the work that we do, and yeah, I think it's important.
Is there anything you still wish to discuss that hasn't been mentioned, or that you just think of?
No, I don't think so. I think I just want to pay tribute really to the teams that I've worked with, the crews that I've worked with, the actors that I've worked with, people who are continuing to make work in really, really difficult circumstances. This was never an easy industry. You know, when I was at drama school, they were like, oh, it's 92% unemployment. We do it anyway because it's vocational. And people make amazing work, make great sacrifices, are poorly paid in many instances, and serve a really important purpose for society. And I just am incredibly proud and privileged to have worked with so many incredible people. And because I think so recently we lost lovely Frank Thompson, who was exactly the same age as me, so I think that's why it really hit home as much as his loss. It reminds you of your own mortality. I think about the people who've passed that I've worked with, you know, going back to Les Mis, or Madame Thénardier, Louise, Louise Plowright was one of the most extraordinary, talented and lovely people. Elaine Whitcomb, who we also lost from that company. With Frank, we also from Sunset, Jill, who was the alternate Norman, who was an absolute legend. I mean, I don't even know where to begin thinking about the people that have gone before me, who I've been lucky enough to work with. And I guess I'm getting to that age now where I think it's important to remember them and to honor them and honor what I learned from them and honor the privilege of having got to know them a little bit and spend time with them. And I'm looking forward to telling more stories. I've been really busy this year. It's been great to see that there is lots of work out there for me. Just shot 7 short films, an online series. I'm doing some presenting work this week. Looking forward to shooting a feature film in January. So there's life in the old girl yet, and I couldn't be happier. And I really appreciate you asking me to come and chat, particularly with my having been gone from the business for so long. I was very flattered, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, Dannii.
Thank you so much, and it was so wonderful talking to you at last and meeting you.
You too. Pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.